Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mer Hersoner podcast, season 3, episode 21. We are live on YouTube and Facebook. It's Thursday, March 23rd, 2023. I'm your host, Vic Abrahamian, and as always, I'm joined by my amazing co-host, Mr. Mike Balian, where we discuss our great Armenian history, covering different eras, topics, and people. Please hit that like button in the bottom of the video. Make sure you are subscribed and share with your friends and family, and do the same thing on Facebook. Dr. Gevork Nazarian is back in the studio with us for our final episode before we do the MerTalk next week, and that's going to be in front of a live audience. We're excited, a little bit nervous,
a lot nervous.
And but today's topic, we're going to be talking about 4 centuries of Armenian Americans, and we have some great slides prepared for our audience. It's going to be a great conversation. But before we start, how are you guys?
Doing great. Thank you for the invite.
Are you tired of us yet? 3 times in a row?
Absolutely not. You can never get tired of
I can't get enough of it.
He can recite the history of Armenia like
I know.
one breath.
I know. Well, I want to thank everybody who's joining us live on YouTube and Facebook. Guys, feel free to comment questions as we're having our conversation. And if any good questions, we'll definitely pass them on to Gevork. But before we start the topic, again, announcements. I want to make sure that everybody's aware. So this is our last episode before we do the MerTalk event next week. And again, guys, this is going to be next Thursday, which is March 30th, and I have the ticker going in the bottom. Tickets are selling. They're starting to move. I think it's an Armenian thing. Wait for last minute and then buy it. But
yeah, that Armenian delay.
Yeah, those of you
guys,
those of you who have who follow us on Instagram, you guys seen the post that I've put in. I was there yesterday doing the walkthrough at the AGBU Art Center in Pasadena. Everything's ready to go. I want to thank our sponsors who are helping us with this. We are so appreciative. We got Armin Living. We have Nazarian Law. We have Crystal Bartenders, who's going to be bartending. We have Armo Coffee, who's going to be who's going to be serving coffee. We have catering that's going to be finger foods. We have a young lady who's a pianist. She's going to be playing some great music during the social hour. Now, very important. I know this is a cultural thing. Us Armenians have the thing, we say 7 o'clock, we show up at 9 o'clock. No, guys. Social hour starts at 7. So get there earlier. I know it's a Thursday.
7.
I know, right? 7 means 7. I know it's a Thursday night. Some people are barely going to be getting home.
Told everybody it starts at 5.
Seriously, right? Well, we'll be there at 5.
Or maybe 2 p.m.
So again, please show up early. Show up around 6:30. We'll probably let you in. I don't know how it works, but we'll be there. Yeah, please come on in. But if you haven't gotten your tickets, guys, please scan that QR code. Get your tickets. We also have the QR code on the top of the screen. We want to see you there. It's gonna be a great event, great conversation. I think you guys are gonna. If you know much about the Armenian Highlands, I think you're going to learn a lot more. And this man is going to give us a great, call it a history lesson in a way, right? But yeah, those of you who are in LA, again, we want to see you guys there. Please go get your tickets. Don't wait last minute. Show up, and we're going to be there socializing with everybody as well. Come up to us, say hi to us. We don't bite. So yeah, I mean, I'm nervous. I'm excited. I'm happy. Like, so much is, coming along. This is going to be great. So, that's pretty much it as far as that. I'm wearing my Anormal shirt again. Thank you to RP Grigorian, who is an amazing artist. She's going to be there too, by the way.
Yeah.
And she's going to be set up a little booth so you guys can see her art and get the t-shirts maybe if you want. But we want you guys to support her. She's a good friend to our show. So you can scan the QR code as well, or go to rpkrikorian.com and look at the stuff she has. It's amazing art on great items, t-shirts, mugs, backpacks for kids. Beautiful work. She is so talented. It is just an amazing human being. So
we have someone watching from Armenia.
Oh wow.
Khachatur 1992 Crusaders.
Wow, Khachatur. Well, thank you. I mean, what time is it? 7 a.m. over there? Thank you so much. We appreciate that. So support RP, guys. You won't regret it. She's an amazing artist. Like I said,
and you guys, she's an awesome person.
Yeah, it's beautiful stuff. So, okay, what else? Am I missing something else? Oh, about our sculptures. I know a lot of people was asking why are the prices going up, guys. It's a manufacturing thing. It's materials. We can't do anything about it.
Business 101.
Yeah, it's going up. So, we decided that we have the new batches coming in April. So, whatever we have right now is selling at these discounted introductory prices that we've been telling everybody, and nobody listens to us obviously for some reason. But go get them, because April 1st prices are going way up. So those of you who have been ordering, thank you guys. We've shipped them. They're on their way. Nejdes, you guys saw it. We have the Nejde sample that we approved. The first batch will have pretty much all of them by next week.
Show it?
Do you wanna grab it?
Show it?
Yeah, you can grab it. Okay, well, I'll sing while you're getting it. But yeah, so the Nejde, we got it, we approved it. So the next 25 batch, there you go. So here, I mean, I don't know if the light's gonna. It's heavy. Here, you know what? Let me switch the camera. No, let me switch the camera. Here. Oh, sorry, Gav. There we go. Amateur video work, but it's heavy, guys. It's big and heavy. Here, lower it.
Cover me anytime you want.
There you go. All right. Okay, so
great work. Congrats.
You know what? Here, put it right here. There we go.
Absolutely.
No, actually, yeah, it'll be in the way of the camera. Yeah. Okay, it's fine. Yeah, so if you haven't ordered yours, go get the Nejde again, guys. The first 25 batch will be here next week. Those of you who pre-ordered, we will start shipping them. You guys will get them hopefully the following week. But yeah, a lot of things happening. We're excited. So enough of me talking. Today's topic, like I said, is
this is an interesting one.
Yeah, it's connecting with everything we've covered, starting with the First Republic and then the Armenian question. Now, I think we kind of discussed about like how this kind of all connects. You know, I mean, a lot of people don't know how the diaspora goes way back,
right?
You know, and so. You know, like I said, today's conversation we've titled it, 4 centuries of Armenian Americans, because that's what it is. It's 4 centuries. So you're gonna talk about this. You're gonna educate us and our audience, right? So let's America is discovered, or let's call it discovered.
Well, yeah. This is before the revolution.
Yeah, before the revolution and everything. So. Going all the way back, again, I wasn't even aware of this, but can you talk about basically who were these first Armenians who arrived to the New World?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Vic. So, yeah, like you said, we're going to cover the Armenian presence in America, specifically North America, to be exact. So this is, pre-United States colonial times, America, North America, that we had Armenian presence. And like you pointed out, our presence, actually Armenian presence in North America goes way back, more than 4 centuries to be exact. So if we know a little bit about early American history, colonial times, we know that obviously, Christopher Columbus was the one that actually sailed to the Americas from Spain.
Yeah.
And he found to be found for America, that is to say. Well, actually, we know that, there might have been Vikings earlier on here in the Americas, maybe even earlier.
10th, 11th century.
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, earlier.
There's evidence of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. But in terms of continued European connection to the Americans, to what they dubbed the New World, that obviously began after Christopher Columbus discovered, quote unquote, the Americans. We obviously know there were Native Americans living here. So that happened in 1492. And in the 16th century, obviously that was from Spain, right? And then followed by Portugal and other European countries, such as, for example, England, right? So the English also began to establish their own colonies. The French did the same, and a number of other European countries, such as, for example, the Dutch, right?
Yeah.
So the English actually established their first permanent colony. There were other English colonies in the Americas in the 15th century which didn't basically survive. They were probably overrun by the Native Americans, or the people there simply died out because of starvation or disease or similar things. But the first permanent colony that was established in North America, in what became this east coast coastline of the eastern coastline of the later United States of colonial times, was the Jamestown colony.
Okay.
In Virginia, in the state of Virginia, that was established by the English in 1607, right? So in a matter of few years, the colony basically attracted a number of people, and among them was this was the first permanent English colony in the new world, in North America, in this east coast as I said, the coast, the Virginia colony. And then that was as I said, 1607, and then in as early as just a decade after that, 1618, there was already an Armenian that basically came to this Jamestown colony, the first permanent English colony in North America. And we actually learn about him from the records of both the colony and, most importantly, the Virginia Company that was responsible for early settlement of Virginia.
Okay.
So the English crown, Elizabeth II, they basically established these colony, the Virginia colony, and then a number of other colonies began to be attracted to this colony, and among them, the earliest to come to this Jamestown colony was an Armenian from the town of Nor-Jura or New Jaffa, an Armenian by the name of Martin. And as I said, we'll learn about him from the records of
from the shipping logs, like
from the shipping logs from the Virginia Company, which, as I said, like the English, the crown, the English crown established a number of companies. First and foremost, the Virginia Company that was responsible for settlement of the English first English colony, permanent colony of Jamestown. So this happened in 1618. So we have in 1618 or 1619, we have the records that state that an Armenian by the name of Martin, who's referred to as Martin the Armenian, he actually,
Martin the Armenian.
Martin the Armenian. Well, obviously he wasn't English, right?
Yeah.
He was like a foreigner, so that was an interesting and new thing for the English colonists. So this Martin, he actually came to the Jamestown colony, and he actually, what is just as interesting, from, as I said, from Nor-Jura or New Jaffa, and he began to, he was responsible for cultivating silk in the Jamestown colony, and basically introduced the cultivation of silk and silkworms, the culture of silkworms, which obviously at this time was a very lucrative and important industry. So Martin the Armenian was the first person to introduce the cultivation of silk into the New World. which is quite amazing. Yeah, because silk in of itself was a prized textile.
Of course.
That was cultivated, produced. It was way more expensive and important than, let's say, cotton or wool.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, till this day.
Till this day.
I mean, all throughout history, there was a silk trade.
Yeah, silk trade,
right?
exactly.
So, I mean, you can go back into ancient times and talk about how certain cultures were trading with Chinese silk and so on and so forth with the Silk Road, right? So
it was our own countryman, Martin, by the name of Martin, who actually introduced that to the first permanent English colony in around 1618, which is
we should do a T-shirt, Martin the Armenian.
you just thought about that a few minutes ago. I didn't want to say anything, man.
Hey, nobody, all right? We're doing it.
What is actually interesting, Vic, is that, we know that the Pilgrim Fathers are considered as the, they're the ones who basically set they were the founding, so to speak, the early founding fathers of the Americas, right? So we had Martin the Armenian 2 years before the Mayflower came to the United States, to the Colonial America, Colonial America, not United States.
Not long time before that.
Like a century and a half before United States was actually established. And so before the Mayflower, 2 years earlier than the Mayflower came with the Pilgrims. So that's quite an amazing thing in and of itself.
Yeah.
It's amazing that there's documentation that leads back to Martin the Armenian.
Martin the Armenian.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's kind of amazing.
Still doing it.
Yeah.
A fictional character.
That's what I'm saying.
Like a T-shirt.
Dressed like a pilgrim. Martin the Armenian. Sorry.
We actually no. We actually have a slide, Vic, of early Jamestown colony reconstruction, if I may show. So if our audience can get an idea of this early settlement, English settlement looked like. So when Martin came, this is what he basically kind of saw, this wooden cabins, and he established the silk industry in the Jamestown. So it was an important thing. Obviously, another important industry was tobacco. So tobacco growing at this time, it was just beginning. And in 1653, there's another record of 2 more Armenians. So as we know, basically Martin came from Eastern Armenia or from Iran, right? Because like North Juga is kind of like Iranian colony from Eastern Armenia. So in 1653, we hear of these 2 Smyrna Armenians, okay? And one of them is actually mentioned as George the Armenian, okay? And he had a friend, another Armenian, who actually came to the Jamestown to further cultivate silkworms, again, silk industry. And then they got also involved in the tobacco growing industry.
Okay.
And the colony actually kind of like awarded them a lot of like tobacco and a number of plantation fields that they would grow tobacco. So they were also very much instrumental in that industry as well, tobacco growing industry. So another mention of 2 more Armenians settling in Jamestown, we hear from 1653. We know that Martin at one point returned to London. He was a prominent member of the Virginia Company back in London. He was one of the shareholders of the Virginia Company back in London. So after like around 1624, we don't hear more about Martin. Unfortunately, the records are silent what happened to him.
Yeah.
But then the other mention that we have of more Armenians in Jamestown is from 1653.
So when you say mention for these 2 more Armenians who got into the tobacco, is it because of the records from the tobacco factory?
From the Jamestown colony, from London.
From London.
Obviously, they were closely in touch with London, right? That was like the mother country.
Yeah.
So everything was coordinated by London, by England.
So the records show.
So the records clearly show, of course.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Should we go to the next slide?
Absolutely. And here is kind of interesting. This was a map published in Amsterdam by in around 1694, 95 of the world map, which clearly shows as well the North American continent with like North America and South America, the Americas, as far as they were explored up to that end of the 17th century. So as we see, the Armenians were very much aware of the world layout of the new world, right? Of the new world. And it's very important. You'll talk more about this. By this time in the 17th century, there was very prominent Armenian merchant network from New Juffa that basically extended in different continents throughout the world. And obviously, the New World was part of that Armenian merchant network. So the Armenian merchants, known as the Khojas from New Juffa, they established various Armenian trading centers throughout the old and as well as the new world that sort of coordinate. So even Martin the Armenian and other Armenians were also part of kind of this network, the merchant Khoja network. And very much so the Armenians needed, by that time, precise maps that showed the continent, the various continents of the world that were known at this time. Obviously, all of North America wasn't traced as we can see, especially the northern parts. There were different continents that
you see how California is showing as an island.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's actually very interesting because they had gone through Baja California. And they thought
they assumed
that was cut off, so they drew it as an island.
Yeah.
Very interesting. There's actually a great video about that. Yeah, very interesting. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Okay. And this is already by the time of the 18th century, Vic, we see that, our knowledge, even this is again, Armenian map of 1787, published by the Mekhitaris fathers, who by this time are already important scholars that were also publishing important.
So this is an Armenian.
This is an Armenian map of of the American continents of North and South America, right?
When was this published again?
1787.
1787. Okay.
Wow.
1787. Yeah.
That is fun. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It is. And as you can see, Armenians were very much aware of the New World, of the Americas. This is very important.
I bet none of you guys knew this.
And this is a very interesting book. So there was this Armenian by the name of Hovik Abrahamian, who was part of this Khoja network, the merchant Armenian network from North Juffa, New Juffa. And then when Armenians established various, centers throughout Asia as well, in places like Singapore, Malaysia, etc., even China, India, there was this Armenian by the name of Hovik Abrahamian. So on a Dutch ship, he actually traveled from Singapore back to Europe.
Yeah.
Because it was his destination to places like Amsterdam, etc. And in 1768, the Dutch ship that he was on actually, it crashed. It hit rocks, and it was in very destitute situation. And the crew with Dutch and etc., these people felt that the ship was going to sink, and they were hopeless. They wanted to abandon ship, but Hovik actually said, no, we're going to continue course. So they sailed from the Indian Ocean, crossed into the Atlantic, but then the ship strayed off course. It was blown off course. It was shipwrecked kind of, but it kind of stayed on water. And he said, when the Dutch crew wanted to abandon ship, Hovik said, no, we're going to stay our course. He actually said, I can actually manage to sort of guide the ship to safety.
Even in that condition?
Even in that condition.
Okay.
And he actually said that, I traveled many times through these oceans. So he had kind of experience in navigating. And he basically took upon himself and convicted the crew that he would actually be as the captain of this ship. And he guided the ship to the Americas. Can you imagine?
Wow.
And it landed in the Americas in 1768, and they saw land, and they were so hopeful that they were so thrilled that they actually reached the shore.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
and they got off, and he was, he was so thrilled that, he said that, I'm going to actually, in the New World, in the Americas, he said, I'm going to publish a book about the Americas. And this is exactly what he did. He actually helped later on. He returned to Europe in 1784, I believe, he published this. He sponsored the publication. He translated into Armenian the publication by the Scottish writer William Robertson of the history of the Americas. So from the discovery of Columbus, Amerigo Vespucci, and other discoveries.
Wow, that would be an interesting read.
Yeah, he translated. This is the actually cover sheet of that book, Mike.
That would be
He translated it into Armenian. He published it with the Mekhitaris fathers, the book, into Armenian. He actually financed it himself, Hovannes Babikian. So
Hovannes the businessman.
Yeah. So
and the sailor.
And the sailor.
Jack Sparrow, bro.
Here in the colonial time. This is really on the cusp of like colonial America / it was when actually it proclaimed its independence after 1776.
Yeah.
So it's this borderline time.
Yeah.
So he crash coursed in 1768, but he published the book in 1784 when America already proclaimed its independence. It was quite amazing figure.
Now, moving into that time period, right? Since we're talking about the 16th, 17th century. No, not the 16th.
18th century.
17th century.
Yeah.
Now into the 18th century. During or before the American Revolution, because I mean, I'm fascinated with the American Revolution and the time period before and after. It's my personal own thing, but I'm curious, what was the Armenian presence before or during this time?
Yeah.
Right? Was there a presence? Was there any significance?
Yes.
You can maybe enlighten us about.
Absolutely. Well, actually, Mike, Hovannes Babikian is a key representative of this period. So Hovannes Babikian was the one that actually is on this timeline when these great events were taking place. So this is like when the French and Indian War just finished, and then just the American Revolutionary War was just picking up. So Babikian is an important person, and his book on the Americans actually helped to further foster an interest about the United States. And a clear example of this is a book published by the Mekhitaris fathers in Vienna in the 1850s about, among other things, founding of the United States, and which is also dedicated to George Washington as the first president of the Americas. And we see this beautiful lithograph engraving of George Washington on this book published by the Mekhitaris fathers in Vienna in 1850s.
So that's what he looked like.
Wow. I'm just going to go off of some generalization that a lot of people wore those.
Yeah.
The wigs.
By the way, Roger, thank you so much for the for the $10 super chat. Appreciate that, man. Thank you. You didn't have to, but Roger.
Yeah, Roger. We'll buy you coffee, bro.
Yeah, Roger. We'll see you tomorrow. Yeah, but that's fascinating. That like there's. I mean, listen. This is for me. I don't know anything about this. So, like the fact that. And especially for you, Mike, the fact that you
I love diving just for personal reasons. It's not to go into some sort of forum or anything like this. For personal reason, I'm fascinated with American history.
I mean,
before and after, I really am.
For me, like it never, I won't say it didn't cross my mind. I just never occurred that Armenians were in the let's say not United States, but North America 4 centuries ago. That's very fascinating to me.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely. It is.
So, wow. Okay, what are we looking at here? The $10 bill.
That's an old note. When money meant something.
Yeah.
So,
sorry, I had to.
Basically, as we said, an important milestone took place in early 19th century when already after the establishment of the United States, Vic, that obviously
this is early 19th century.
Early 19th century.
Okay.
First half of the 19th century, early 19th century, when United States was established, obviously there was a very strong religious driven convictions in the United States and early United States. So United States also was an important country that had this sort of religious zeal, Protestant zeal, missionary zeal. and early part of the 19th century, the American Board of Commissioners for Foreign Missions was established, ABCFM, which is a very important initiative. So a number of Americans who were driven by this Protestant missionary zeal, they decided to, in their view, spread their creed, their doctrines throughout the world. And this also included the Ottoman Empire. So in the first half of the 19th century, a number of American missionaries, they actually came to to different parts of the world, but first and foremost to what they call the Bible lands. So Armenia being the core Bible land, always in the Bible referred to as the land of Eden, the paradise on earth, and the missionaries knew this, right? Land of Ararat. When humanity was actually created, if you look at the old maps, I don't know now, but I showed earlier, I think I sent you these maps. Like if you look at old European maps, you always see these, the Garden of Eden always marked in Armenia. And the missionaries knew this, that Armenia was closely associated with the Garden of Eden, where humanity was created, Adam and Eve, etc. And also the land where humanity was given a second chance of the great deluge, great flood, Noah and the Noah's Ark, right? Land of Ararat. It actually found its resting place in Ararat. So the missionaries knew all of this. So Armenia was considered the land of paradise. So they obviously wanted to come to Armenia, and they knew that Armenia at this time was unfortunately under the domination of the Turks, the Ottoman Empire. So the missionaries actually came to Armenia and spread the word of, the gospel. And they knew, of course, that Armenians were also Christians, but they hoped that the Turks, Kurds, and other Muslims would also, listen to them. But obviously the Turks and the Kurds would not listen to them. Of course,
why would they?
Yeah. So, but they formed this close relationship with the Armenians, and a number of Armenians started to adhere more and more to the Protestant sort of creed, that direction. And then after the 1830s and 1840s, a number of Armenians who were closely associated with these missionaries from the United States, they developed a close relationship. And after these missionaries established centers, schools, educational centers, etc., throughout Western Armenia and other parts of the Ottoman Empire, they also had a lot of students in there. A lot of these students were basically, learned English. They were fluent in English. And starting as early as 1830s, the students began to came with the missionaries to the United States, right? So among these early people that came to the United States, was one by the name of Christopher Terseropian. And when we saw earlier the $10 banknote.
Let me go back to that.
Yes, please, Vic. Christopher Terseropian, he actually came to the United States. He enrolled in Yale, English-speaking young man who actually was fluent in English. He brilliantly graduated from Yale. He was a chemist by profession. He came up with this dye, the green and black dye, that he basically patented to the United States government, which bought it for $6,000 back then. Can you imagine? It's a huge amount now.
Wow.
Which still to this day, Vic, it's actually used as the dye, the greenback, and the green and black dye for the dollars. It's still used.
It's still the same.
It's still in use to this day. Christopher Terseropian, the Armenian guy in 1830s, he came to the United States, and basically that dye became the dye that was used for the dollar. And
that's unbelievable.
Yes. Can you imagine? And still in use today. So today, every time you use dollar bills, remember Christopher Terseropian, who actually, he came up with that dye.
That's another T-shirt.
We're just making T-shirts.
It's another T-shirt.
Yeah. No, but it's amazing that this kind of going back to Michael Cunningham, talking about, and I've seen this on a lot of stuff on Instagram, people doing, Armenians who have contributed to even, so much
Some
to even
major
modern technology and things like that. But
Stepan Partaman actually has a good book on that.
Yes.
I would recommend people reading up. Yeah, I think, yes, we have. That's what it's called. I recommend that book. Like, I'm not going to mention all of that because
no, I understand. But,
done that.
but I'm saying like this is one thing I didn't know.
I had no idea.
No idea. I don't think a lot of people don't
That's
know.
wild, man. That's pretty wild.
So every time that those $100 bills, or during the wedding when you're
remember who invented the die. It's quite amazing.
So okay, mid 19th century, we're moving. Let's. I know I'm kind of like skipping the timeline here. Civil War. Was there any, just by chance, I'm just going to ask the question, was there any sort of involvement with Armenians during the American Civil War or during the Lincoln era?
Yes.
Or, during this, because it was a big time of turmoil. Anyone who knows their American history.
Yeah.
Right?
What is quite amazing, like you absolutely pointed out, Mike, we had Armenians coming here already, as I said, 1830s, 40s, 50s, not huge numbers, right?
No.
They weren't. We had mass migration to the United States in the second half of the 19th century,
Yes.
especially after 1880s, right? 1870s, 1880s, especially in the 1890s after the Hamidian massacres. But we already had Armenians in mid 19th century as well. And a number of them were actually participants of the American Civil War.
I think we have a picture. I had to skip one ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you skipped one, but that's okay because, we have several, but that's okay. That's okay, Vic. So here we see actually Garabet, Kalustian, and Haik Matevosyan, two participants, both of them Armenians of the Civil War.
That seems
insane.
Both are Armenians.
Both Armenians, and interestingly, so far as we know, Vic, all of the Armenians that served, there are 4 or 5 Armenians that we know documented that served in the Civil War. All of them were in the Union Army, right?
I was about to ask, was it for the North or for the South?
Is in the Confederate Army because most of the Armenians that came to the United States at this time, they settled in the North.
In the North.
So they were like Northerners in the Yankee states, So they were like
more shipping lanes, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Because you had New York, Boston.
They were in the Union Army.
Yeah.
They were in the Union Army. Yeah. Here's another Armenian, again, Garabet Vartanyan, who actually, again, served in the Union Army. Just another Armenian.
That's so crazy.
Participant of the American Civil War.
The fact that there's photographs of these men.
And here, even as you see in the New York Herald, right? Remember we talked about the Zaytun resistance?
Yeah.
The public,
even the American press knew about the Zaytun resistance, and they actually compared the Armenian participation in the American Civil War to the Zaytun resistance.
Wow.
It says the public should be aware that many of them, Armenians, are now fighting the battles of the Union in the regular service of the United States with the same bravery which distinguished their compatriots recently in Zaytun. One of them has received no less than 6 wounds and is still fighting. New York Herald from 1863. Damn!
That is...
Can you imagine?
That's
and the Zaytun resistance was in 1862.
Yeah.
So the American press, the American people knew about this.
Yeah. That's wild.
That is.
I'm just learning about this.
I'm speechless. I don't even know how to respond or react to this. This is like so much information.
If this Armenians go back and are part of the American fabric, from the origins, we really mean it. We don't just say it.
If this conversation happened on the street, not that I'm discrediting you, but if it was just some other person, I'm like, come on, man. There's another claim to this whole everyone's Armenian. Dude,
there you go. There you go. What awesome, man. So what are we looking at here?
So as I said, this is basically from a photo from the 1870s, 1880s. that Armenians established themselves. And very briefly, when I talked about the East Coast and how Armenians established themselves, Vic, I actually want to mention some of the earliest communities that Armenians actually did that. So one of the earliest communities Armenian that has an Armenian presence was Worcester, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
We had an Armenian as early as 1867 by the name of Gatto. That's his, unfortunately, we don't know his last name. So Gatto, in 1867, he came to Worcester, Massachusetts, and established himself there. After a few years, he actually moved to the Watertown, town of Watertown, again in Massachusetts.
Yeah, Watertown, Massachusetts, yeah.
So Worcester was an early center. We have Gatto in 1867. There was an early company that employed Armenians. Believe it or not, the founder was also a missionary at one point who was in close contact with Western Armenia. There was this Washburn and Mon wire company that employed Armenians in its
Where have we seen this?
Hold on. I was gonna let him finish it and say this. My great grandfather from my dad's side moved. We've talked about this.
Yeah.
Moved to the Boston area. I don't know exactly where. I probably should get more details.
This was 20th century.
1912.
1912.
But this is bringing a lot more context
Yeah.
to that fact. So my mind's like, okay, this makes a lot more sense. Like, so if you're talking about the 1870s, 1880s.
Yeah, 1867. This is right after the Civil War.
Yeah, so there, if he's talking about there were companies that were employing Armenians, the word must have gotten out through telegrams, through whatever the case is, right? Back then. So it was more of like we're
believe it or not, the Washburn and Moen company in Worcester, Mike, they were actually making telegram wire.
Yeah.
So Armenians were employed in that. That's one like one of the earliest companies that employed Armenians. And Gatto, early on, after a few years, he actually moved to Watertown. So he's actually one of the earliest settlers, not only in Worcester, but also Watertown. So we're talking about 1860s, 1870s. This is when the Armenian community...
Actually, that really kind of ties into the next question is when do we see these large wave of Armenians coming to the United States at this point?
Okay, so in the 1870s, 1880s, as I said, Washburn and Moen employed the Armenians, so the community developed there in the especially 1870s and 1880s. Later on, the Armenian community in 1890s especially also developed in Watertown, Massachusetts. And there was this Hood Rubber Company that also employed Armenians. So the early Armenian settlements on the East Coast in Massachusetts, they revolved around these early companies, important companies. So obviously the rubber company made rubber products such as shoes. Later on, they started making tires and other products, right? So they were employed by them. So the community grew into hundreds and eventually into thousands and eventually tens of thousands. So, from Worcester, later on, Watertown even became a larger community. Boston was also, believe it or not,
Worcester. I've been to Worcester before. A long time ago when I played hockey. I went out there for tryouts or whatever, something like hockey camps or whatever. Worcester, Marlborough. I didn't go to Watertown, but everything's so close. Massachusetts is
Boston. Boston is very close to Watertown.
Yeah. It's a small state.
It's like a suburb of Boston.
Okay. So you were talking about the rubber company.
Yes,
do you know where we talked about that?
I'm trying to remember.
Arthur and Bruce. Who's
mentioned that actually a lot of the images here are from Project Save and from various books that mostly use Project Save photographs. So thanks to them, credit to them.
When you said the rubber company, I've heard of this. I've seen it.
They're also like mostly these are archival photos from Project Save and also from photos collected by Haik Demoyan, Robert Mirak, who's a very important, believe it or not, scholar in Armenian American history, Ara Avakian, also important scholar. So thanks to them. And their work.
Even our audience is mentioning it.
Thank you. Yeah, you mentioned it. Thank you. You nailed that. Yep.
these are just more photos
More
from
photos
early
of
Armenians, basically East Coast Armenians, right? And we're gonna talk about also how the Armenian community eventually established itself on the West Coast, also in the San Joaquin Valley, in places like Fresno.
The young gentleman.
Yeah, East Coast, 1870s,
Look at those
80s,
dapper
90s.
suits, guys. Look at that. So cool.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow. Look at that.
Yeah, this
And look, they look successful.
I
That's
mean,
what I
they
love.
were. They
They look
Everybody back
successful.
then looked successful, man.
No, not just that. I mean, not everybody looked successful, but
even if they basically didn't have a lot of money, they always had, this is like their Sunday's best, for what they go to church. Unfortunately, Vic, I wouldn't say like these early Armenians, most of them were not like, they weren't rich people, okay?
no,
Because
not
they were-
rich in the sense of, but they made
were
something of
developed, like,
themselves. Yeah.
It's like, honestly, most of them were even below like middle class.
Really?
Yes, they were,
Wow.
but
Okay.
like most of them, yeah. Some were kind of like successful, but like most of them were.
Do we know who these people are, or it's just pictures of?
We do know, but like if we go into detail, like these are basically, you can say, for Armenians from the 1870s, 1890s.
Yeah.
East Coast Armenians that that form part of these early Armenian communities throughout the West Coast. So it wasn't just, as I said, Worcester, Watertown, Boston. Also, our Armenian presence was in Philadelphia, New York. All these,
There's a lot of Armenians that I know from Philadelphia as well that are that have been there for close to
Long
100
time.
years. Yeah.
Goa brings a good. I mean, I don't know if she says that first Armenian church was built in
Worcester.
we're gonna cover that.
Yeah,
We're gonna have that photo. We're not there yet.
Okay. Go on. Hold your horses. Next.
Yeah. Here it is. This is the Church of Our Saviors in
Naming.
I know.
She was right on, huh?
Spot on.
So this is from 1890 and 1891. So this is what Gohar was talking about. This is the first Armenian church that was built in Worcester, Massachusetts, consecrated in 1891. Church of Our Savior. Just more Armenian.
Pictures.
Yeah,
These are amazing photos.
they are.
It really takes you back of like in time and just to see how they dressed, how they look like. I mean, even their facial hairstyles.
I with all
Top
these
hats.
with all these Armenians coming in, right? Let's say, I'm sure it kind of snowballed and picked up steam. Beyond, let's say, Massachusetts, were there any other areas that they would settle in that we've known? Because look, Boston area or the Massachusetts area.
This is an important photo I want to talk about, Mike, that you actually mentioned. This is actually the factory, Ironworks factory of Moses Gulesian from Boston from 1880s.
Yeah, we talked about this.
This is a very historic photo. So this is Moses Gulesian from Boston who established the ironworks. And we know traditionally Armenians were very much into ironworks. Okay, our ancestors were the earliest into smelting various irons.
Of course,
They have different, like,
We
remember
covered
that
this.
made
Yep.
before? Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was a traditional craft, Armenian craft. And Moses Gulesian established this factory. And what is amazing is like he actually, like, this is a from 1880s photo with his factory man. And there you can see the, believe it or not, of all things, the coat of arms of Britain. And he actually restored the old coat of arms of Britain that at one point was on the old State House building of Boston.
Yeah.
In the 70s. Mike, this might be of great interest to you. This is the coat of arms, like the lion and the unicorn, the coat of arms of Britain. They actually put this up at one time it was torn down. So Moses Gulesian was the one who actually recreated this, and it was put up on the Boston Old State House building, and it's still there to this day, made in 1880s by him. And it was this building, Mike, that it's considered the place where the American Revolution began with the massacre of Boston in 1770.
Boston Massacre.
Boston Massacre of March 5th, 1770. So this is still standing there to this day, made by Gulesian.
Wow, it's amazing how we were tied into this. It's so cool.
Yeah.
God, this is so cool.
More pictures. What are we looking at here?
And here this is actually Moses Pashkian, who was also very important, one of the earliest Armenians. I hope we're not skipping any photos. I don't know why, but I thought there were earlier photos before this, but anyway.
It's going one by one.
Okay.
Just how you sent me.
Okay.
brother.
So this is Moses Pashkian, who established himself of all the places in Pasadena in late 19th century. And what is interesting about him, he actually in the late 19th century established the Pashkian rug business. And as we know, rug is one of our traditional crafts that, our ancestors have been weaving for millennia, right? So when early Armenians came to the United States in the 19th century, they also introduced that craft of rug weaving.
Yeah.
So the old rug businesses that were known as quote unquote Oriental rug stores throughout the United States in the 19th and early 20th century, but began by Armenians. In the 19th century, for example, we didn't see that photo. I hope we're going to see it later on.
Okay.
Hago Bohikian was the one in Boston who established in the 1880s this Oriental quote unquote business. But Pashkian in Pasadena, he established a store which is still there, Moses Pashkian. It's actually in Pasadena. And in 1915, he was actually for the Tournament of Roses. He was actually the marshal for the Tournament of Roses. So that was photo of Moses Pashkian as the marshal for the Tournament of Roses. So it was a very prominent Pasadena community member, and he was nominated as marshal for it. Before that,
crazy.
Vic, we had the photo of an Armenian, Shirinian.
Famous last name.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And actually, the Shirinians still to this day they're weaving rugs.
And there's a big Shirinyan in eastern Turkey, or I should say, I gotta stop saying that. In Armenia, Western Armenia.
Western Armenia. Yeah.
Modern day Eastern.
Modern. Yeah,
Yeah.
Armenia.
Of course, Shirinian. Yeah.
Yeah. In the Humshin, I want to say Humshin.
Well, there's a famous Shirinian to this day in Constantinople.
No. They're like as close. I don't know if it's Humshin or what part, but they're still there. It's a pretty big family.
Okay.
Shirinians, yeah.
Okay.
I'll find out more because my
right.
parents actually visited there. And
of course.
Bravo,
But I didn't
God.
expect
Bravo,
Well,
God. Occupied Armenia.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Occupied
Armenia. Thank
Bravo.
you. So we see this Shirinian in 1897 and also in 1890s. There were Armenians, as I said, they introduced the craft, Armenian national traditional craft of rug weaving into the United States. This is a clear illustration of that. In 1897, Shirinian is weaving a rug in the United States, Providence, Rhode Island. Photo.
Wow.
Just a Armenian from the early late 19th century.
Wasn't there a photo we saw that was from the Fresno? I know obviously this is later in the 20s where the bicycle shop.
Yes.
It was a bicycle shop and something else at the same time. Armenians were very creative.
Yes,
Yeah, very creative. Interesting. The Examiner.
The Examiner. So, well, we're going to have those photos probably later on. So I want to talk briefly. So so Armenians, we talked about the Armenians on the East Coast, right?
Yeah.
But
Is this about the San Joaquin Valley
yes,
area?
it is.
Yeah, I
Yes,
was
it
going to
is.
ask you about that. Okay, yeah.
So the first Armenian that actually came here was from Worcester, who actually moved from here. Like, so Armenians from Worcester, from Philadelphia, places like that, moved to San Joaquin Valley, Fresno. Yeah. So the first Armenian recorded Armenians was Frank Yanikian, who moved to Fresno in 1874. That was the first Armenian that we know of.
So still recorded. 19th century.
Yes, it is.
Fresno Frank.
Yeah, Frank Yannickian was considered the first Armenian to who came to Fresno, 1874. Well, he didn't stay too long in Fresno. He kind of returned back, but a permanent Armenian strong presence was established by the Sedopian brothers, who again moved from Worcester in 1881.
Okay.
And the Sedopian brothers actually got into this fruit business in the San Joaquin Valley, because we know
agriculture,
exactly. So it was like fresh produce at the same time, also dry fruits, right? Because they sold fresh fruits at the season, but they also exactly. But they made dry fruits which you could use throughout the season, right? Because back then they didn't have refrigerators.
Well,
right?
That's an ancient, going way back from our culture.
Absolutely.
So I was going to ask, like, what kind of professions did Armenians get into? And we've been talking about this slowly but surely. They didn't stray too far away from our natural crafts.
Absolutely.
It's like we brought our culture and our training and our understanding of things here. Yeah. So, I mean, more or less, like if there's anything else that we're missing, like what else did they get involved in?
Absolutely.
What kind of industries? What kind of businesses? What kind of facets of the industrial? At the time, you were talking about the Industrial Revolution, right?
Yes.
So what else did they get involved in?
Well, Mike.
Should I go through the slides as you're
just a second. Let me really cover this. Mike's question, Vic. So basically, on the East Coast, they were more like into trades, into crafts, but also, as I said, they worked these early factories, right? But honestly, a lot of Armenians, they yearned for this agriculture, for cultivating the soil, which reminded them of their native homeland, right? So a lot of them actually, both from Western Armenia, and also from the East Coast, they moved to Fresno. They moved to the San Joaquin Valley, and this is where they actually were able to sort of work in the agriculture sector, right? Yeah. Because on the East Coast, there wasn't the soil wasn't as fertile. The climate was different, right? So on the East Coast, they were mostly in these factories. Some were like just mostly in the factories. Some were craftsmen. Some early on, got into these trades.
Well, you had
rugs were important.
You also had the Industrial Revolution was a lot more dense in the East Coast than it was in the West Coast. It kind of started sweeping through.
The West Coast was mostly agriculture, So, but a lot of Armenians prefer that. So that's the major difference. And what they did get here, I mentioned the Sedopian brothers. So Sedopian brothers were very successful. They in 1881 they moved to the Fresno, and they were originally from Marzvan in Western Armenia. So they were Marzvan Armenians. And in the 1880s, a number of Armenians moved from Marzvan to Fresno as well, because they were enticed by this Sedopian brothers, because like these Armenians, they would, was in close contacts with the homeland, with Western Armenia. They would send letters and say, okay, things are going good, etc. So that encouraged other Armenians to settle in Fresno. So the early settlers in Fresno were Marzvan Armenians. Then other Armenians from other parts of Western Armenia joined them. But they were involved overwhelmingly in agriculture in Fresno. So what is quite interesting, these Sedopian brothers set up this caravan of mules, which actually, after they made these dry fruits, they sold the fresh produce throughout the San Joaquin Valley in Fresno and nearby. But when they made the dry fruits, they actually imported those fruits to different parts of California. Exported these dry fruits to different parts of California, most notably to San Francisco. So they set up this caravan of mules that actually imported the dry fruits to San Francisco, which was an important new innovation.
It was post gold rush, right? It was post gold rush. So San Francisco was booming in California.
Exactly.
Well before LA was even
a thing.
It was a village.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And
San Francisco
still has the Victorian style, right? If you go to the city, the architecture, you can actually see that 19th century vibe. So they actually had that, those like caravans packed with dry fruits, would actually take the fruits to San Francisco. And actually it made the news. That was such a huge thing. that actually was on the news, that this long journey, because right from Fresno to San Francisco, that was still a very long journey.
Yeah. I mean, at the time on
yeah.
you know, horse and buggy.
Yeah, we're talking the 1880s, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I mean, with a car, we're talking about what, like about a 2.5 hour drive from Fresno to San Francisco.
Okay, you're talking about now the cars that came out.
You're talking possibly about a 3-day journey.
Yeah.
A little different.
And having fuels as backup.
At least they showed up a little.
Yeah. There you go. All right, let's go to the next slide.
Okay, and
There you go.
Exactly, and then we see that this is like Seropian brothers were not the only Armenians who did that. So followed by this is the Arakelian company again, having these dry fruits, raisins, and other dry fruits exported to places like San Francisco and other towns and cities across California, and also already utilizing not only just mules but also horses, wagons, and also trains, early wagon trains that transported these dry fruits to other parts of California.
That's so. I mean, this is literally.
You can actually see Arakelian stamped on the train, on the wagon.
By the way, I have an
crazy.
obsession with trains. I just want to put that out there.
Literally when you're laying out tracks.
Yeah.
West Coast. Like, think about that for a second.
I have an obsession with trains.
Like these trains were there for hundreds of years.
Let me tell you, just looking at this picture, I can already smell the you know how the train tracks have that smell? Oh my god, that wood with the oil on it. No, I love trains, old trains. Like I'll use any opportunity to go see old trains if I can. Like I'm fascinated by them. But this is amazing.
Keswick Griffith Park.
I've been there too many times. I'm over it. I'm over that one. I gotta go to different ones. All right, so going to the next slide.
Okay.
Oh wow!
Here's actually the Seropian brothers factory. I actually want to mention, a good friend of mine, Haraj Kozibek, also reminded me. He said, "Gevork, absolutely. When you talk about the San Joaquin Valley Armenians, make sure to mention Yetem, which the Armenians, early settlers who went to the San Joaquin Valley, they actually founded this also community." And then, since the San Joaquin Valley so much reminded them of their homeland of Armenia, which, as I said, was associated with the Garden of Eden, which is in Armenian is Yedem. Yeah. So they actually named one of the settlements as Yetem in the San Joaquin Valley.
Wow.
Well.
Yes, and it still continues.
The wizard is actually here in the studio with us.
Guys,
We have to,
can you show yourself? Baron? Kasmekat. Egur.
Come say hello.
Say hello. Say hi.
Yeah. He's here.
thank you for helping us.
Another wonderful human being.
Well, you've been on. I was just gonna say that.
You being here.
So, those of you who might be new to our podcast, Haraj was the first guest that we did an actual YouTube live episode, and we were from his home studio, and we talked about the amazing rugs that this man has, and he's the rug guru because he will recite the history of.
He's just the wizard.
They don't call it the
He's a
wizard.
historian. It's not just about rugs.
On tradition,
Not just about rugs.
I mean, he's number one. I'm being totally. It's not because Haraj is my friend. No,
Thank you.
like foremost authority on Armenian rugs, traditional rugs, right here. We have the privilege and honor.
Historian.
Yeah, and we're gonna have him back on.
Being honest,
We're gonna have him
totally
back on.
honest.
Yeah. All right. No problem. All right. So, okay, back to the
Seropian
brothers.
Figs. Okay, so figs, raisins. Look at that.
So this is
raisins. Yeah, so it's dried fruit.
Dried fruit. Yeah, it says dried fruit. Yeah.
Yeah, actually made. So can you imagine? So the Seropian brothers, Mike, Vic, they were actually the at this time the most prominent family of Fresno. Okay, if you said the Seropian brothers, back on the East Coast, it was the Jacob Bogikian who actually, guess what? He made his fortune in the traditional Armenian rugs. Raj knows that very, very well. So, like back on the East Coast, Hagop Borikian was basically a millionaire by 1890s.
Yeah.
And the Seropian brothers, by the turn of the century, they were sort of the made millionaires on the West Coast.
That's
So
wild.
Borikian was on the East Coast, and on the West Coast, the Seropian brothers were actually making news as this great tycoons of Armenian fruit produce.
What are we looking at here?
These are again just
pictures, just
photos of
photos.
Armenians in the late
Yeah.
19th
I'm
century.
sure they're one of our great women.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Beautiful pictures.
Yes. And in 19th century, late 19th century, Vic, we know that, the Hamidian massacres began in 1894. Unfortunately, hundreds of thousands of Armenians were slaughtered, and many more were forced to, flee Armenia. Many fled to parts of Europe, other places, Eastern Armenia, and many actually after 1894 came to the United States. There were also an outcry of Americans. We know that, as we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, we talked about the last
talked
episode.
about the missionaries, right? So there was already a powerful American presence in Western Armenia. The missionaries opened up colleges, schools, different educational facilities.
Yeah.
Churches throughout Western Armenia, so they were closely connected with Armenia. So the missionaries were the ones who had this outcry of Armenians being killed on, and a lot of Armenians after the massacres in tens of thousands came to the United States, and this is actually for the mass migration of Armenians took place after the Hamidian massacres. Believe it or
Oh,
not.
I can imagine.
And it was very much covered in the American press because the missionaries made sure to point out what is going on in Armenia. They were also very upset by what Abdul Hamid II, the bloody Sultan, was doing to the Armenians.
Yeah. I want to, again, thank everybody who's joining us live on YouTube and Facebook. We got a great conversation going on here about the, we're
thanks,
talking
guys.
we're talking about the 4 centuries of Armenian Americans, dating back pretty much stemming back to
before pretty much before the
17,
Pilgrims.
17,
The Pilgrims.
what was the first one? Sorry, I forgot. It was 16. Martin the Armenian.
Permanent English colony, North American colony, Jamestown.
There you
That
go.
was about before Plymouth and the Pilgrims.
Yes.
Martin the Armenian.
Martin
Teacher's
the
coming
Armenian.
soon. But yeah, again, thank you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat. And we have a question from
Truth Lion is asking, are there any of these descendants of these pioneers of the Armenians alive? Or is there any
Okay, we
record
have
of
to
anything?
clarify. What do you mean by pioneers?
Are there any of these really early settlers of Armenians that may have maybe come along in the 17th, 18th century that maybe
we
there's
don't know.
records?
Martin the Armenian to George the Armenian was probably Gevork, by the way. We don't know what happened to, because like the records are so scant in the 17th century. We don't even know to somebody.
we don't know if they got married, had children, none of that. They could have just died.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, already when we come to the 19th century, we know much more. For example, the Worcester Armenians are there, the Watertown Armenians are there, the Boston Armenians are there.
About a more established,
Yeah.
I don't want to say society, but let
For example, like the Fresno Armenians to this day, it's like one of the most important. The Armenian town of Fresno. That's historic Fresno. So it's like the same can be said of Worcester. Same can be said of Watertown. Those early 19th century Armenian settlements, now they're part and parcel of these early communities.
Yeah.
You can't, for example, today you can't speak of the history of Fresno without mentioning the Armenian input.
Of course. What are we looking at here?
Here, actually, this is quite historic. There was an important American writer, Alice Stone Blackwell, that actually, she wrote a lot about the plight of the Armenians, about the Hamidian massacres. She was, very much friend of the Armenians, of the Armenian cause. And early Armenians at that time, they actually made this beautiful clock and presented to her, to Alice Stone Blackwell in memory of. And the interesting thing, it has the early coat of arms of Armenia at the top, and very beautifully done. I just wanted to illustrate this.
Yeah. It's unbelievable work.
Very craftsmanship. Yeah, it's beautifully done. Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to the next slide. We're gonna take a quick break shortly, and then we'll continue. But we're looking at some.
These are books after the Hamidian massacre, published by, believe it or not, by the Americans, by the missionaries who were very much upset of what the Turks were doing to the Armenians. So remember, we talked about by the time of
fast back then.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So again, this ties into why. Remember, we talked about why Wilson said that we have to be allies with the Armenian people, with Armenia. So this all ties into it to say, this is very important. That actually points out that, there was this important American Armenian connections going back to the 19th century,
That's
predating. Yeah, so you see, it was very well covered in the American press. Books were being published about the Hamidian massacres. These are just samples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible.
Here again, like this is in the Christian Herald about the massacres, and immediately thereafter, American Red Cross was formed, and American Red Cross, actually one of its first international missions was to aid the survivors of the Hamidian massacres. So American Red Cross and the charity that came about as a result of that emerged as a result of the Hamidian massacres.
And this is late 19th century.
Late 19th century. And I also forgot to mention, by the way, Vic, that, we know Monte Melkonian, right?
Yeah.
Monte Melkonian also hails from these Armenians of Fresno.
Yeah.
And he was also one of the early Marzvan families of Fresno that, established the community. And he was this great, offspring of that clan,
one of our
the
great
Melkonians
heroes.
of our great hero, like Artsakh freedom fighter. He was a freedom fighter even before that. So we should remember, like, it's quite interesting that, that lineage continued on, and even, one of our greatest heroes today is Monte Melkonian, hails from those Fresno Armenians.
Yeah.
Didn't Andranik spend some time?
Andranik spent his last years in Fresno, absolutely. So did Solomon Tehlirian. And a number of others, not only them,
Yeah. You want to take a quick break before we continue? Yeah?
Sure.
All right, guys. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. So enjoy this couple of videos we have. right, everybody, we're back. A couple of promos there. So I hope you enjoyed those videos. But again, I want to thank everybody who's joining us live on YouTube and Facebook. We are discussing 4 centuries of Armenian Americans, and we're showing some amazing pictures that Gevork provided on the for the slides that we have going on the screen for you guys. I want to tell everybody, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and ask away. Yeah, ask away. We'll get to them. And I want to thank everyone for the great comments. Thank you guys for the support.
Great conversation, guys.
Yeah, and as far as I know that Khachadar was saying, why isn't there more? Again, we know that a lot of people are busy Thursday night, but share with your friends and family. They'll watch it later too, but if they want to join us live,
it's on the internet forever.
Yes, that's the great thing. It's always there
on the internet forever.
Yeah. All right, so going back to what were we? This image right here.
Right. So this is actually Jim Chankalian, a participant of the Spanish-American War. Later on, he was a great freedom fighter for Armenia. He fought in Kilikia, of other things. Was one of the important officers of the Armenian Legion. So a number of Armenians were obviously by the late 19th century also took part in the Spanish-American War. And this is Jim Chankalian.
Wow. Like this is crazy historic.
Yeah.
Like,
this is like Theodore Roosevelt, Rough Riders. These are like Theodore Roosevelt was, believe it or not, was a great champion of the Armenian cause. Before Wilson, he was a great friend of the Armenian people. He said Armenia is our great ally, and so are the Armenian people.
That is so wow.
Like again, more Armenians participants of the Spanish-American War. 1899.
They knew we were going to talk about this. Look at him posing.
Yeah. I mean, I had no clue about that. I mean, you're more into our American history.
I didn't know. I mean, are you kidding? This adds so much of a different dimension for things I may research in the future just for myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Again, we see more Armenians, turn of the century, 19th, early 20th century.
Early 20th century.
Early 20th, late 19th. Here we see, as I said, our traditional craft rug weaving was introduced to United States.
Yeah.
So the so-called Oriental rugs, when you think of them, it's all started by Armenians, okay? There's no say. It's like they had to be like Armenian, to be honest, rugs, but they just called it Oriental, Anyway.
I'm sure they had different meanings to the terminologies back then, right?
So not only Armenia sold rugs, they actually renovated them, cleaned them, wove them in the United States.
I mean, talk about a business plan, right? Yeah. They make the rugs and then, you need somebody to clean it. So there we go. Oriental rug cleaners. Man, we are business. It's just amazing. It's amazing. All right, moving on.
Okay, see, they even actually taught how to actually weave.
School of weaving,
rug weaving. So they actually can you see?
They had all the grounds covered. From the creation to the selling and to the cleaning
and then teaching
Yeah.
Selling.
There was also restoration.
Restoration.
Okay. So also a lot of Armenians, remember we talked initially they were involved in the factories, but obviously they wanted their own businesses. So they felt that when they saved up a little bit, they also opened up small shops like grocery shops, mom and pop shops. And Armenians were also into this small mom and pop shops like grocery stores.
It's something that comes culturally from ancient times because whatever any Armenian and everything we've covered throughout history, you see that everybody had some kind of specialty, right? If it was metallurgy or rug weaving, whatever it is, everybody kind of it felt like they should have their own little booth shop, whatever it was. And we've done that throughout centuries, even migrating to different countries and not just the United States. You got Argentina, you got Uruguay, you got
all over the South America. Armenian community there. You're absolutely right on.
And it's something even here. If you look at most Armenians, they tend to, when they migrate somewhere, they'll get a job where they learn some kind of a craft, or if already have a craft, kind of go into that field and everything, save up money and then go on their own. And that's the beauty of our people Armenians in general that tend to strive and become successful. Would you agree?
Oh, completely.
Yeah, more.
Again, this is just, they were also like importing furs and things like that, like coats. And so this is just another shop of Armenians.
That's great.
Different furs, coats, and things like that. Again, just more mom and pop shops on the East Coast, New York, Philadelphia, Boston, obviously. And, still those that couldn't afford their own shops, unfortunately, they were employed in these factories. And I must say, unfortunately, the conditions there were not, they were kind of hazardous. They weren't healthy.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the rubber company I mentioned, that was like a hazardous to their health.
Well, that was
a lot of them later on had number of health issues because they worked in this factories that had very poor conditions. They didn't have the regulations that we have.
I was just going to say that.
They didn't have them.
Look, during some of the stuff that I've dove into, even with the UK, right? A lot of the Industrial Revolution had poor working standards in general.
Absolutely.
Because all those machines that were made, they didn't think about those things back then.
Like they know that, for example, that caused cancer and things like that.
The whole asbestos thing. Anybody who knows about the asbestos issues that people have had from, let's say, 70, 80 years ago, these things weren't scientifically studied and whatnot. And none of these...
they were still building
hierarchy didn't
things
think about
with
these
asbestos as late as 1970s for crying out loud.
Now go back 130, 140 years during the height of the Industrial Revolution.
Of course.
None of these people that were putting down these massive warehouses with these insane machines were thinking about these things. Just get to work here. You're going to get your pay, make this, make that. Doesn't matter what happens to you after that.
Yeah.
They didn't think about these things, right?
Just photos of Armenians, they would laborers working in this industrial places, construction, all kinds of jobs if you think about, but those that could afford and save up would buy an automobile or something like that.
Look at that, the whole fam bam.
So they wanted really show that they saved enough money to buy their own automobile. This like early 20th century, they would proudly show that.
Remember there was one picture of the actual Armenian ASA in New York.
We have that.
We have that. Okay, all right, we'll get that. That's the one where. There you go.
1912, Vic. This is the ASA, Armenian Student Association, which was established in 1910.
Shout out to them, by the way. They're a great organization, and I know that they
established in 1910.
Yeah, they've led their students.
American Armenian.
Those of you who are part of the ASA, come join us next Thursday. They're a great association, but we taled about this. How
1912. The photo is from 1912. ASA outing. In New York.
I think these are high schoolers. I want to say, or
no, this is like college. Is college?
They were saying, or I don't know. I forget what Ruth was saying. Maybe I might be wrong. It might be college, but they're in their early 20s, right? So, or some of them are even in their late teens.
We have an episode, by the way, you guys. I forgot. Was it in season 2 with Artovan and Ruth?
Yes, season 2.
Season
Ruth
2.
Tomasian,
And you guys
Project Save.
Project Save, yeah. If you guys want to go back, we have
Thanks to Project Save, we have these photos.
Yes.
What
was it? Like over 1 million.
Yeah, so those of you who are interested in more photos like this, if you guys Google Project Save, they have a website. They have an archive of amazing photography of all Armenian archived. Going way back. So you guys could definitely
have old photos of family.
You can send it to them. Yeah,
they archive it because it's a big part of our history and our lineage and things that we're talking about right now today. So dig in. Figure it out.
So what are we looking at here?
Just an Armenian publication from those early times. Armenian American Yearbook from 1913. Just a sampler. Wow. Actually, one of the first publications in the United States was published in 1888. As early as 1888, we already had Armenian publications, newspapers, journals. This is just again as samples from those like early 20th century. Yeah, and this is Hodikian, I believe. He actually bought a building in Glendale, of all the things, in 1917. So as early as 1917, we had the Hodikian building in Glendale, and I believe in Glendale, for example, we had first Armenian as early as 1900. It was just very, very small.
That's how it began.
Yeah, small town, very
Damn,
small
my
town.
great-grandpa was late.
And just Armenians on the eve of World War One, they all already formed these, unions, military unions that eventually were initially, when United States hadn't entered World War One, they were like voluntary unions, joined various allied armies in Europe, such as France, Russia, etc. But when the United States joined the war in 1917, Armenians in thousands enlisted in the American army.
So I actually have a question about that. Like during that time, the population of the Armenians, approximately during
Good
like
question.
entering World War One. How do you have like kind of a figure? And as far as this Great War, how did it impact the Armenian American community?
Right. So we know, Vic, around that time, we had like an 80,000 strong Armenian American community. And then thousands and thousands joined various, allied armies. So that was a very, like, as we can see, it was like en masse, you can say, because like that's overwhelmingly like Armenian community was involved. Why? Because we had placed a lot of our hopes into the liberation of Armenia.
Yeah.
The Armenian genocide was still ongoing. So we kind of like it was very important and very major thing that a lot of Armenian Americans joined various armed formations of the allied armies, be it like the Armenian Legion and the French army, regular American armed forces after 1917, as I said. And these are just sample photos of some of these Armenian American veterans.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Them Armenian boys.
Yeah.
Do we know, like, I mean, approximate, I don't want to say approximate, but did many of them return, or did we have a lot of losses as these men joined the World War?
We had losses, but, a lot of them actually, did return. They were veterans, and we know, but we actually had, our own casualties who became important symbols of our own participation as well, our commitment to the cause of freedom. And here we see during World War I, there were a number of patriotic floats, like Armenian American floats. And, this is actually a very famous statement by William Gladstone, the Prime Minister of Britain. Remember, we spoke about him last time on the Armenian Question episode. So he actually has this great statement, says, "To serve Armenia is to serve civilization." William Gladstone, the Prime Minister of Britain. So that was sort of became an important
slogan.
Absolutely. And we actually see like the American flag, the shield, and also the blue, white, and red. Remember, we talked about Armenian colors, blue, white, and red shield for Armenia. And this is a float, again, from World War I. So basically, there was very close. Again, just another Armenian American float from this time.
Look at the Tarazner.
Yeah, look at that.
It's beautiful.
President Woodrow Wilson, an Armenian publication of Kochnak, an important Armenian publication from the period, again, showing, obviously a close friend of the Armenian people in Armenia, great champion of the Armenian cause of free, united, and independent Armenia. Again, we talked about this on the First Republic and the Armenian Question episode about President Woodrow Wilson, his importance, how he helped with the Near East relief, how he actually championed the United Armenia with the Arbitrary Award.
Yeah.
Great friend of the Armenian people and the Armenian cause. And this is in 1919.
He looks very Armenian.
But this is actually an American.
That's funny.
American with a red, white, and blue flag made by Armenian women and gifted to America. He's holding this from 1919.
That's crazy.
It actually says from Armenian women to American women on the flag, embroidered flag. And here, just another Armenian woman in the United States who basically actually raised funds to free Armenian women that were, after the genocide, taken over by the Turks and Kurds to be Turkified and Kurdified. They were basically these, taken up by these harems.
Yeah.
So Armenians would raise funds to free them, free orphans. So they again would return to the Armenian community. Women and children that were taken up, the men were killed and they were taken up to be Turkified and raised as Turks and Kurds.
Harems.
Yeah.
Seems like a.
This is actually Vartan Malcolm, he actually wrote the first book on the Armenian Americans, the Armenians of America, in 1919 of all the things. So
19, right after.
Yeah. When our relationship of United States and Armenia was very, very close, he actually wrote this book, The Armenians of America. It's a very important book. The earliest.
Is it still available?
Yeah, it's available. It's available. It's also even available online. It has been reprinted. And if you actually see on the cover, you can actually see the blue, white, and red flag and the coat of arms of Armenia. Again, what we talked about, the early Armenian flag.
I know people. I don't know. I think that's just beautiful.
That should be the flag.
Should be the flag.
Armenia,
I don't know.
Well, that's what Boris Nubar said. That should be the flag of Armenia once we have the united Armenia restored. Here it is, just the cover.
It close up. Yeah, I'm gonna get this book. I'm gonna get this.
Yeah.
Book. No, I'm just curious to read. I mean,
it's a great book.
To read what this man wrote in 1919, how he viewed the diaspora in America.
Say you can also get the Robert Mirak's book, The Armenians in America. It's also a great
when was that written?
That was written in 1980s.
1980s. Okay.
Yeah, 1980s.
But to see the shift, from 1919 to 1980.
1970s, Ara Avakian also wrote a very good book, Armenians in America. And Haik Demoyan's book is also very good, Armenian Legacy in America, published recently.
Yeah.
This is the embassy of the Republic of Armenia in that was established after 1918, and it actually, what is interesting, Vic, it functioned until 1930s, all the way into 1930s, and even issued passport certificates. So it actually functioned as the embassy of the Republic of Armenia, recognized by the U.S. government. As the lawful government of the Republic of Armenia. The Soviet Armenia was never recognized by the United States because it was never an independent and free country.
It was a rogue country.
It was like a puppet regime set up by the Bolsheviks. So the borders of the Republic of Armenia, with the arbitrary award established by President Wilson, and the Republic of Armenia's embassy fully functioned for decades.
Wow, look at this. $5 a month, $60 a year.
Look, this is from the Near East Relief to raise money. And as you can see, that's the Alexandropol or Gyumri orphanage. And it says 16,000 orphans pictured in the photo.
Yeah.
And this was actually sent by the Near East Relief, so the American people would actually raise funds.
And we've mentioned this before. I mean, they raised about 50 million, 30 or 50 million?
They eventually raised the sum of what is in today's currency, $3 billion.
That's what I'm saying. Back then it was like 50 million.
Yeah. It was
something like that. Yeah.
So, and this is just a poster, Uncle Sam hugging Armenian orphans, on the backdrop of Mount Ararat, a very important, famous Near East Relief poster. This is just how they collected. They also collected these old clothes.
Yeah.
There was this drive, People would just have these bundles. They would turn into Near East Relief. It was sent to the Armenian orphans. This is for the Armenian mission to the United States of the Republic.
We saw this photo.
Yeah.
We saw this
Remember
photo.
Yes. Is actually there in the back. It's just from the front.
Yeah.
You're completely spot on.
This photo.
You're spot on, Mike. And this is Jackie Coogan, who's actually raising the funds. Yeah. This is for the Near East.
We covered this with
with our own Haraj, Kozi Beyok, the great. So, you might not remember, a lot of our people might not remember him as the Jackie Coogan as the kid, but you know what? As they will remember him as Uncle Fester of
Yep.
the Adams family.
man.
This is Uncle Fester.
He grew up and played.
He later on became the Uncle Fester of the Adams family in the 1960s, famous. This is just another Armenian from the time, member of the National Guard, you know?
Yeah. There was a question saying we have an Armenian American as a U.S. Admiral too.
Yes.
Who do you?
Secretary of the Navy. Admiral? Wait,
Admiral?
is that the secretary? Is that
Somebody made a
Ignatius?
comment.
Okay.
I don't. They forgot the name too. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I thought maybe you would remember.
It's Paul Ignatius, that's what they mean. And then Ignatius, he was like Secretary of the Navy. We're going to have him.
This is the famous.
This is the
There you
famous from the 20s
Yeah.
won by Markhasian in the United States with like George Washington and the American coat of arms, the bald eagle, right?
Yeah.
And this is, believe it or not, guess what? It's actually in the collection of Harac Gozibeyokian.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I notice a lot of people are joining late. I want to take a poll, guys, and just say yes or no. I know we start at 7:30. Is that too early? Do you guys want us to start?
Is it a convenient time?
Yeah. Do you guys want us to start later, like around 8, maybe 8:30? Is that? I don't know. Like,
We can accommodate.
yeah, we can work around that. If 7:30 is too
Whatever
early
makes it
for most
easier
of
for
you.
you guys.
It's just I always think about the East Coast people who join us because it's already like 10:30 over there. So, but yeah, let us know yes or no if you like 7:30 slot or you want to maybe push it to 8, half an hour later.
The Statue of Liberty in Armenia's 1920s, they just symbolically, as a symbol of America, they wanted to take this photo. I think it's beautiful photograph.
You know, I've been to New York, and I just, for some reason, every time we tried to go to the
Ellis
statue,
Island?
we couldn't.
You know, they say that the copper on the Statue of Liberty comes from Lori. It's
No.
from the yes, it is.
Oh, you're
yes, it
kidding
is.
me.
Absolutely, it's from the copper mined in
kidding me.
Lori, shipped to France, and in France, the statue. Yes, 80%.
80%.
Harac is actually pointing out, reminding me that 80% is from Lori, the copper of the Statue of Liberty.
Where can we? Not that I'm.
So,
not that I'm disputing it.
media in America, if you look at the Statue of Liberty, the
Not
copper
that I'm
from
disputing, but where can we find more information about this? Okay, so Harac is saying the French imported it
Yeah.
to cast it here.
In France. Yeah.
Because the architect was French.
Yeah. But in the brought here.
Yeah.
But what we're saying
brought
there is, for people not to, say, oh, now you're just naming things. Is there somehow we can find research to show?
No, of course, not to
Yeah.
discredit this
No,
at all.
yeah.
I mean, okay.
It's a date.
it's bad for
It's a date, Harac. You'll be back on with us. All right, moving on.
Okay, this is our beloved General Andranik with the Armenian family on the East Coast, 1924, just a couple of years before he passed away. This is famous Armenian architect Haik Badikian, so of San Francisco. So he's one of the most famous sculptors of San Francisco from 1920s. And by 1920s and 1930s, there was also a very growing, strong Armenian community in San Francisco. In the 1930s, actually, the Armenian community of San Francisco surpassed that of Fresno in terms of its population.
I'm sure. I'm sure
Yeah.
because it was a bustling metropolis.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. This is
I
actually...
mean, and again, to refer to this, LA grew because of the film industry in the 1920s.
Yes.
Right?
That's
Post
correct.
World War
we
I.
had Armenians
This is
already by late 19th century.
So San Francisco was already a.
Oh, it was.
San Francisco was considered. You guys should know.
Yeah.
It was the New York of the West
It
Coast.
was.
Yeah.
It was. And it still has that beautiful architecture, as I said, the
Yeah.
Victorian architecture. It's really nice. This is again Haik Patikian with the statue of Lincoln. Before that, we saw the pediment. He actually designed that, the whole sculptures. That was his work.
So this is the one in DC, right?
No, this is the one for San Francisco.
Oh, this is the one in San
Yeah, this is
Francisco.
for San Francisco. That's not the Lincoln Memorial, no, of the DC. This is, of course, the Armenian Zildjian, Aveti Zildjian. symbols. You know the symbols, right? So this is one of it.
Till this day, they have
Yeah.
it. It's still there.
Yes,
It's very popular
Ovid
symbols
Iziljan.
in the drumming world. Yep.
Here he is with his lovely wife, Ovid Iziljan, 1920s.
It's amazing.
That's crazy.
This is just Armenian football player, Can Karagyozian from Loyola from early 1930s, you know. Again, this is Zaven Melik. So he not only designed the Wilson poster, he also made such beautiful works.
That's pretty cool.
You
man.
see, like George Washington
and
taking the hand of Vartan Mamikonian. So, like Armenian American close ties. This is one of the works of Zaven Melik. Great. He's actually a great artist, you know, like unfortunately not as much talked about him.
Yeah.
But he was a great
That's a
Armenian
that's a
American
really
artist,
cool
Zaven
photo.
Melik. William Saroyan,
Yeah.
the great one from Fresno.
Yeah.
Okay. Our great writer.
Great writer.
Yes. And we're going to talk about Arshil Gorky. That
You know what's
Hamish also
funny?
told me that
William
definitely
Saroyan-
talk about Arshil Gorky.
Most people know him with his older picture, right?
Yeah. Just said talk about Arshil Gorky and where his image right there.
There we go. Okay, but before that, William Saroyan, most of them know him because of his when he was older
Beard.
age with the
with the mustache
and everything.
Yeah.
That's an image of him
Yeah.
when he was younger, a lot younger.
No. This is Arshil Gorky.
No, the one before.
Oh,
picture.
before. Oh, I
before
see.
picture.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, let's talk about him.
Well, you know, like one of the great, probably the greatest Armenian American artist of the United States. Arshil Gorky, known by the name of, actually his real name was Vostanik Adoyan from Van. Okay. So he actually worked in the Hood Rubber Company early on as a very like a young man. Can you believe it or not? In Watertown. And then, you know, he just evolved into this artist. Unfortunately, he never recovered from the trauma of the genocide. His mother died after the genocide and, you know, in Armenia, of all the things, Republic of Armenia. So he was like, kind of like, he had these scars, and he committed suicide. But he's a great artist, Arshil Gorky, that, you know, is still very much his works.
Was he the one portrayed in the
Ararat movie? Yes, he was.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
he was.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Spot on. Yeah. This is a famous Armenian American. Yeah, Armenian American soldier, Marine, James Kizirian, who actually, you know, he was actually one of the heroes of the battles on the Pacific Theater in Okinawa.
So this is World War II.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. World War II.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
World War II. Yeah.
Go ahead. That'll lead me to my next question.
Right.
actually.
So basically, yeah, Armenian participation was also very prominent in World War II. This is, you know, him as a famous Marine, highly decorated, you know, and he was actually, you know, as such, as we saw, the New York Magazine actually did a story on him, you know, as a hero of the Pacific Theater, fought on Okinawa there. And then this is another highly decorated Armenian American, Victor Magakian, recipient of not one but 2 Purple Hearts, which is actually the highest award, highest military award of the United States. He got 2. Can you imagine?
I mean, okay, so now we're going into World War II, right? So post World War I, genocide, whatnot, Bolshevik Revolution. I'm sure there was a lot of Armenians that migrated into the States, say what, the 20s, 30, early 30s, mid 30s, right? So a lot of these people may or may not have participated in World War II because of their movement or their migration to the States, right? What kind of other roles did they play during this time period?
Right.
During World War II, or maybe pre-World War II, to World War II, and then post-World War II?
Absolutely. Well, you're totally right on. Like, especially during and after World War II, as we saw, a number of Armenians also came to the United States. This is actually in line with what you're saying, Mike. So after World War II, there were a lot of Armenians who were basically in Europe. And then a number of Armenian Americans, such as Brigadier General Haik Shekerjan, we actually saw a photo of him, Vic, just before that. And this is also Brigadier General Haik Shekerjan with George Mardikian, also another prominent Armenian American, and Sam Saroyan, also with the bow tie, and seated is Brigadier General Haik Shekerjan.
Yeah.
Standing is George Mardikian. They helped a lot of Armenians that were POWs in like German camps, etc. They freed them, and they actually helped them to come to
The U.S.
To the U.S. And believe it or not, an important Armenian American community developed of Montebello. So thousands and thousands of Armenians stuck in Europe and in POW camps, etc., known as the DPs, displaced persons. They came to the United States, and this gave the rise for the Montebello Armenian community.
Okay.
So remember we talked about the before.
That's Eisenhower.
That's Eisenhower with Ernest Dervishian. He's actually one of, again, a highly decorated Purple Heart recipient of World War II. So this is Ernest Dervishian with Dwight Eisenhower, the Supreme Allied Military Commander of the United States, who, of course, in the 1950s became the U.S. president, right? Yeah. So he's actually with Ernest Dervishian. This is, again, Ernest Dervishian on the left, who, famous, he got Purple Heart. He was in the European theater in Italy. Some, actually, believe it or not, Armenian American women participants of the World War.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. I'm telling you, our women are amazing.
Yeah.
Are amazing.
And this is just an icon, Ross Bagdasarian, who actually created the chipmunks. So Ross Bagdasarian is
I knew about this. I knew about this.
The creator of the chipmunks.
I knew about this.
So those of you are into
pop culture stuff.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
My kids used to watch them.
Chipmunks.
Alvin.
Okay, and this is in the 40s, 50s, 60s.
Yes,
Americans were in various important sports like baseball, football. Yeah. This is just Chuck Esagian for the LA Dodgers in the 1950s and early 60s. American football for the Giants, many Armenian players.
Oh yeah, there was another pitcher I remember from the 80s, Steve Bedrosian.
Oh, right.
He was a famous pitcher for the San Francisco Giants. Yeah. And I mean, he ended up playing at a bunch of different teams before he retired. Right. Yeah, there was.
Sir, yes. And of course, for the Notre Dame, Ara Parserian, the coach of the Notre Dame, he actually, under him in the 1960s, Notre Dame, they actually scored. They actually had the championship a couple of times. Here's the racer.
Yep.
That actually I talked about. There were several Armenian American racers in the 1950s and 60s, famous.
1957.
Crazy.
Yeah.
1957.
57. And
what's his face? Don't know, Borosian, Zach Borosian, right now that's in the NHL. Yeah. His grandfather, I believe, was either played professional NFL, in the 60s, was a place kicker, or was a place kicker for one of the major universities in the 60s in D1. Okay. That's how he got his family start.
Yeah.
Armenians love their classic cars.
Yeah. Till this day.
Yeah. Wait, that's not a BMW?
They were importing BMWs back then. Yeah.
Just again, Don Manukian, famous football player from the 1950s. Probably nobody remembers him now, but back then he was,
I want to mention those of you who are going to be listening to the podcast later. We're going through these slides. We'll post a link to the YouTube. You guys can come watch it because obviously, we're trying to describe it as much as possible, but you guys want to come, watch it on YouTube and for you to see it.
Ignatius, Secretary of the Navy. That was huge.
Wow.
Yeah, 1970s, 60s, late 60s, 1970s. So we had an Armenian as the Secretary of Navy.
Yeah.
We actually had Thomas Corvin. Vic, I sent.
We talked about. Didn't you mention him?
I don't know. I sent the photo, but it didn't come up with the slides. That's okay. He's actually considered the earliest Armenian state elected official from 1830s and 40s. He was a Hungarian Armenian, Thomas Corvin. I sent his photo. I know somehow it's not in the feed, but that's okay. That's okay. Yes, he was a Hungarian Armenian. He was elected to the House of Representatives in 1830s. Of all the things, and he was later his Secretary of the Treasury. This is actually they're erecting the statue of the genocide statue in Montebello.
Montebello,
from 1967.
Yeah,
it was actually completed on April 24, 1968.
The Armenian community in Montebello was huge.
Yeah.
I mean, till this day,
Still is.
obviously it's not the same. No, it's not the same. But
they've got their
Montebello was the place to be.
Yeah.
They've got their roots.
And this is Ronald Reagan, who at that time was the governor of California. He's actually speaking at the opening of the genocide memorial in Montebello. Here's Governor George Dugmagian.
George
Great.
He became the governor in the 1980s, right?
Yes.
So,
Great governor.
Again, Montebello Memorial. And this is when Armenia became reestablished its independence in 1991. There's great hope, that Armenia should be very close, the closest ally with the United States. So that in 1991, there was commemorative stamps issued for that. And this is James Baghyan. He's an Armenian American astronaut in late 1980s and early 1990s. So we even had an Armenian American astronaut.
Wait, he's still alive, right?
He's alive.
I think he did a presentation at AGBU, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he did. Yes,
yeah, recently, last week or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. Is there another Armenian astronaut that we might know?
Not that I know of.
So it was him. It had to be him. Yeah, because I remember my kids were saying, there was an astronaut who came and they were all excited. So
that's great.
yeah.
Yes, I think his and this, of course, as I said, in my opinion, the greatest, and I think I'm right, authority on Armenian rugs. We have the pleasure and honor of
that's a golden mug shot, man.
So, our community is blessed to actually have Faraj as the foremost authority on Armenian rugs. And this is not me saying it, but in Armenia, they actually, when they need expertise on traditional Armenian rugs, classification, restoration, everything,
He's the guy.
They go to Faraj. Okay,
and the history
we
linked.
should honor and remember that.
And the history linked to it.
Blessed to have Faraj among us.
Well, now, we covered all these great Armenians and kind of we talked about the beginning and everything that came around. What would you say the significance of the Armenian community is today?
The significance of the Armenian community, Vic, most importantly, is basically we have to understand that, as I showed, just that image when Armenia was reestablishing its independence in 1991, there was a lot of hope placed on the fact that Armenia has to basically, strengthen its tie with the United States. So the Armenian American community, if it really wants to help Armenia, help the United States, it has to help to foster the alliance that was established way back, or that cooperation that you can say goes back to Martin the Armenian. And then it just took off from there. It strengthened during, especially, in the 19th century with the missionaries and the close cooperation. And of course, President Woodrow Wilson was our greatest champion of the Armenian cause. So I think if Armenian American community has an important mission to play to strengthen the ties that were established back then, we have to revitalize that. The Armenian American has to revitalize those ties and strengthen those ties and help to foster a much, much closer alliance between the United States and Armenia for the benefit of both the United States and Armenia.
Yeah.
Both for the American people and the Armenian people. In my humble opinion, that is very, very important endeavor. And so far, I think, the Armenian American community hasn't fully used and that potential that it has to foster that close alliance. It hasn't. Why it hasn't? That's another question, but it definitely has to work towards that direction. Absolutely.
Well, here's all this information. If this doesn't bring people together into understanding where and why we came here and how we came here and the businesses we established here, right?
The relationships.
The relationships, exactly. And when you start thinking about this, if this doesn't start clustering us even closer together,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say, but you're kind of like a lost cause.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, because this is such awesome information.
Of course.
I mean, I'm not even trying to pitch it in a different way. Like, think about it for a second. 400 years ago, Martin the Armenian.
Yeah, and you mentioned that, and again, we're monitoring the chats here, and you see so many like, wow, this is amazing. I didn't know this.
See,
I think that's the problem. I think we're not knowledgeable. We're detached. There you go. Perfect word to use. And end of the day, all of us have the same cause. Doesn't matter what you're doing. Everything you and I are doing, that you're doing,
looking for answers.
Besides the answers, it's for the betterment of Armenia.
Yeah.
Right? Armenians.
Yes.
So I think, and I get it. It's a very stressful time for Armenia, for Armenians. But we have to figure out a way to get rid of this divide.
Yeah.
And work together, diaspora, Armenia. When I say diaspora, I'm talking about the entire world, not just the United States. And we have to, again, at least for me, I'm coming to realization that being a nationalist, as far as Armenia goes, right, is a great thing. But at the same time, you have to be able to have partners who can help you to become better and stronger as a country, right? And I think it's time for people to start realizing that there's other options, and we need to come together and work on this goal to make Armenia better and greater. That's my opinion. I know a lot of people might not agree with what I'm saying, but that's how I see it, and that's the ultimate goal for us is, greater Armenia, better Armenia for our kids, their kids, the future generations to come.
Everyone takes a different path, right? Nobody takes the same path altogether. And the divide doesn't matter where you acquire your information from. It should be just talked about instead of knocking one another down. You know? We're all headed to the same mountain peak.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah.
And just like we have to be realistic about things. Vic, Mike, I absolutely agree with you. And at the same time, I personally firmly believe that, strengthening, like we talked about, specifically staying on topic, strengthening the Armenian American ties is to the benefit of the Armenian people and the American people. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. I think history has shown that and proved it right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, at one point, we talked about in the previous episodes, for a number of things, it was knocked off course.
Yeah.
These powers, they intervened and knocked it off course. There were also, like within even U.S., some voices that knocked it off course, unfortunately. And because of that, I would make the argument that even United States paid the price because of that. Again, like look at Turkey, supposedly like this ally, quote unquote. But no, it's not. I'm sorry. Just history and time showed it that it's not,
Turkey is only for Turkey. They
exactly. No, exactly. Yeah.
Turkey does
there
not.
are no shared values. There are no, but I would make the argument, and I think, again, history proved it right, that, the Armenian people do share those values. And I think we have to base that alliance on shared values, shared interests, shared vision. It's something very important, and I think the Armenian American community has to play a much more important and vibrant role in strengthening that, again, for the benefit of the United States and Armenia. Like I said, it's a mutually beneficial alliance that should be fostered, strengthened, and the Armenian American community has to take a proactive approach, more healthy approach. Not just sit and say, oh, why is this way? Why isn't this happening? Why? No, what are you doing to make it stronger?
Exactly.
What are you like? Enough of complaining, enough of quote unquote, just complaining, whining, and just like you have to. No, if there are problems, if there are problems, make it better. Don't just sit and complain. Make it work. Make it work.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to put us on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Get up.
That's the approach. That's the approach for success.
Yeah. Well, this was. Did you want to?
Do you want to say something, Haraj?
You can talk into the mic over here. Yeah.
Talked about Ross Baghdasaryan, creator of Chipmunks.
Okay.
Many people don't know that he was the cousin of William Saroyan.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
And in 1939, Ross Baghdasaryan and William Saroyan, driving through New Mexico, 1939, they make an American song of a famous Armenian folk song that Armenians used to sing. Many people know that song. It's in the Armenian song is Yegurier Tankmezi Shakaran Kezi. You've heard this song.
I haven't.
Many have. Well, they write the concept, that concept of that song.
Yeah.
They write in English.
Yeah.
In 1939. In 1951, Rosemary Clooney, the aunt of George Clooney,
Yes.
jazz singer, grabs that song and make it an icon.
You're kidding me. That's
Wow.
That song describes how the Armenian houses are, to invite you to their suites, to their table for the food and for the sweets and so forth, so on. I just want to inject that.
That's
Should say
awesome.
that.
Well,
Yeah.
that was a daily dose of Haraj.
It's just
Manelli's saying right there. Manelli's saying I can listen to Haraj for decades. Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much for that that information. See, it's amazing. It's amazing. These are the great men that we want, and women. We want them on the show to tell these stories, things that we don't know about, and we want to learn. So, but again, Haraj, thank you for that information. This was great. This was a little bit of a lighter show where we wanted to showcase the how important Armenians have been in the Americas, in America, I should say, and the United States.
Fascinating history.
Yeah, and those pictures were amazing. So
I mean, just to review, they were involved. I mean, not that it's a good thing, but they were involved in all the major events.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say wars or anything. Events in the American timeline, pre and post American Revolution.
So this was our third show, kind of like the final show before our live event. Again, I want to remind everybody that next week, March 30th, starting at 7 p.m.
2 p.m. guys. Armenian time, 2 p.m.
Yeah. Is our first live event titled MerTalk, exploring the Cradle of Civilization. Our guest speaker is going to be Gevork Nazarian, who's going to be, kind of educating us. Kind of educating us. I don't know why I'm using the word kind of, but he is going to be educating. But a lot of people know about the Armenians, but some information that a lot of people might not know, So again, guys, come
on down.
Yeah. If you are in the LA area, please get your tickets. They're only $20, and we've mentioned it many times. If you use the promo code TAMART, you'll get half off if you buy 2 or more. Bring your kids who are of age that can understand, at least what we're going to be talking about, and share with your friends. Come by, have some drinks.
Bring your friends.
Yeah, have some drinks, food, socialize, and then we'll be on stage at 8:00. And the show's probably going to be about an hour and a half, max 2 hours. We are going to have a Q&A at the end. So those of you who might have questions are welcome to, we'll figure out how we're going to do this. We haven't really kind of put it together, but yeah, we're definitely going to have a Q&A. Gevork, what would you say? Why should people come next Thursday, in your opinion?
Well, first and foremost, Vic, I think most importantly, like I said, if they really, we've been trying to point out that, we're all about educating the people. If they really want to learn, if they want to understand their own origins of the Armenian people, origin of civilization, all of human, civilization, if that interests them, then definitely they should come, because this is where it all began.
Yeah.
This is where it all began. If that interests them, that how humanity, human civilization as we know it began, this is all it. And in terms of our own origins as a people, is also closely related with all of this. So this is, part and parcel of our common heritage, of human heritage. And then we as Armenians will also have to know, this is simply historic facts and history. This is not that, something to be bragged or not bragged about. This is just this historic facts. Because oftentimes even our own people, they think that our origins are shrouded in different periods, in different way. It has been unfortunately presented in different way than it actually is. So we're going to present them historic facts and just the facts based on archaeology, comparative linguistics, and other evidence that actually shows otherwise, and I think it's very important. I think it's very important to know the origin of not only, like I said, our own history, but that of humanity.
Yeah.
Well, besides meeting this genius in person, come on down. And in life, we all look for answers. We all look for answers in where we come from, right?
Yeah.
Come down and learn about the significance of Armenian history in the region called Mesopotamia, and how far back this goes to, and the insane amounts of contributions we had to the land between the two rivers. Come down and learn.
Yeah. Well said, gentlemen. Well, again, Gevork, thank you so much for doing this. We'll see you next Thursday. We'll be together. And I want to thank everybody who joined us tonight live on YouTube and Facebook. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the questions. We love you guys. We appreciate the support. Follow us on Instagram, where we post all our updates. Get your tickets. If you want to support the show, go to patreon.com/Mer Hersoner. You can also support us by becoming a member on YouTube. And get your sculptures. Use the promo code Artsakh, and you'll get 10% off. Like I've mentioned it, April 1st, price is going up. Besides that, we're excited for next Thursday. I think it's going to be great. Again, we hope we see you guys there. Tickets are still available. And as we always say at the end of the show, respect one another.
Love one another.
And till the next episode, take care of yourselves.